Good evening. Good evening. We're having our Budget Committee meeting today. Today is May 9th, 2023. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's do roll call, and we'll go to my left.
Jared Talbot, School Board Rep.
Olivia Welch-Erdahl.
Frank Hobbs.
Peter Georgantis, Selectman's Rep.
Joe Alexander.
Brian Mazer. Doug Pounds.
Lauren Dukas.
Allison DeCesare.
Richard Manzo.
Samantha Kearns.
Richard Fletcher from Water Precinct.
Laura Stevens. Stacy Belmore, Vice Chair for now.
Melanie Renfrew-Hebert, Chair for now. Thank you, and welcome to all of our new members. Just, a little hand up if you're brand new here, or just note that your tags look different from everybody else's. We're very glad to have you. Today's first order of business is election for Chair and Vice Chair. Danielle, you'll be giving us direction on that? Will I be just taking nominations? At this time, I will be looking for nominations for Chair. Yes, Stacy.
I'd like to nominate Melanie Renfro-Hebert, please.
Are there any others? Second,
Make a
sorry,
motion,
second.
Joe Alexander.
Second.
Okay, so we have Melanie Renfrew-Hebert, Joe Alexander. Does the group, I remember last time we took a little bit of time for people to discuss before they vote. So we will take 2 minutes. Allison, did you have your hand up? Okay. We have, we'll take like 2 minutes for discussion, and then we'll come back for a vote.
Are you, point of order, what are you doing? Are you pausing the meeting, adjourning the meeting?
Opening for discussion.
Just for discussion, Peter.
So last year what the committee chose to do as part of their rules of order during the election process was to take open nominations and then allow each of those nominees to take a minute or so to basically introduce themselves, say what their background is, so the committee is familiar with who they are before a vote is taken.
So we're not going to break into a separate group and talk between us?
No, just a minute or two for those who are nominated to talk about why they feel that they would make a good chair. And I'll let you go first.
Well, first of all, thank you, Madam Chair. I accept the nomination. I have been on this committee for 6 years. My first year was in 2018. So I've followed this process through quite a bit. I'm a former chair of this committee. I was chair for a year. I think during more times where we had some rollover, didn't really have leadership that got reelected, and kind of I think I guided this committee in the right direction. I would say the biggest role of being the chair of this committee is to be the impartial, non-partial voice to which they entertain and allow everybody else to speak, and then chooses not to take a position at least until after things are decided. So I accept the nomination. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Frank. I think I'm well suited to lead this committee again, so I ask for your vote.
Thank you. Almost everyone knows me, Melanie Renfrew-Hebert. This is my first year chairing the committee, and I have thoroughly enjoyed the process. It's given me a window into how it works with the town and the school in more depth. It's given me an opportunity to have further discussions with every member here who was here during the last session. I would echo what Joe said, that the chair's voice is really to ensure that everybody else's voice is heard equally, and that as a reminder that no voice is any louder than any other, including the chair. So I'm asking for your vote for, to continue as chair, to continue to learn and grow in the position, and to experience this with the next sessions as we go. Thank you. Yes,
Are we allowed to ask questions of the?
yes, please. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joe, I did love when you were the chair for my first year that you were here. I do have two questions, though. Last year, you missed a number of meetings. I think you were absent for 3 meetings and you left 3 early. I'm wondering what your commitment is going to look like this year and why this year is going to be any different for you in a chair position, because last year you didn't seem as committed as you had been the previous years you'd been on this committee.
Well, that's a good question. I think part of it is the juggling, the fact that I work a full-time job that happens at nights, and during the legislative session, obviously I wear a couple different hats, and that ends up being difficult. I will say that typically the committee meets on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I've readjusted my schedule accordingly. Obviously, as chair, you need to make more of, like, if not the largest commitment to this, so I'm prepared to do it. I think a few of those meetings you said I left early, I think it was like 5 minutes or so, like it was like something really quick. So I appreciate, though, you asking that and keeping me accountable, but I'm definitely prepared to lead this and make sure my schedule is working with it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joe, the year prior, you actually stepped down from wanting to be the chair, and I had all intentions of revoting you in because you actually ran this budget committee very well. You actually never gave us a reason why you did not want to come back as chair, and I'm surprised you're actually running again. Can you give us a reason why you stepped down for a year and then wanting to come back now?
Yeah, my reason is personal reasons. I really, I think I appreciate the public tuning in, but I don't think it's something where I need to get into personal reasons. I think that leading and wearing multiple hats and being involved at the state level I'm kind of trying to refocus myself on local issues, so that's why I'm running again.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Yes.
You know I'm full of questions. I always am. Not only these are questions are for you. So I know last year, as your first year, you did have some bumps in the road in running the committee. I'm wondering what this year you've prepared yourself for to run this committee and how you've kind of regrouped yourself for this.
Well, thank you for the question. And last year, being my first year, was different. The other committee that I chair, has 3 members in it. They're a little bit more flexible and don't meet as often. So this year was a learning curve. Last year was a learning curve, rather. And I did spend time going over procedures, going over past notes, and looking at the things that the Budget Committee has done in the timeline and the calendar to make sure that my calendar is clear and available to do that, and also to make sure that I have a firmer grip on procedure. So, and I thank you for the question.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Peter.
It's going to be for both of you. I'll start with Joe. If you're elected to this committee, as the chair of this committee, and the committee votes against something that you would not approve of, would you be able to get up at a public forum and speak for the committee and not for your feelings?
Well, and that's the job of the chairman, and I don't think I would ever speak against the committee. I think it's important that the committee has a voice, and there's some really important votes coming up, really important public hearings, and I think that, for instance, there's a lot of issues affecting the town. The library, there's going to be a new fire station, and regardless of where I personally stand on these issues, my job is to make sure that the committee's voice is heard. So I will not take a position on any issue before the committee votes. And if I'm in the minority, I will not be advocating against the committee publicly.
Melanie, same question.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. I do feel that even as chair, that my voice as a resident is just as strong as any other resident in the community. And when it comes to a public forum that is open to all residents for their voice, that any individual on this committee, chair, vice chair, or member, has a right and responsibility to be able to stand up and speak their mind on a particular issue. With that said, how I vote on the committee for my personal interests are not involved. I do what I think is right for the community, and sometimes they do align. So, thank you for the question.
Just to clarify what you just said, you would not speak for the committee if you were against an item?
I would not stand and say that I was speaking for the committee for an item.
But would you get up and speak for the Budget Committee at a hearing if you did not believe in what they voted yes for? This is an important part of being.
Can you
I've chaired
clarify
this
the question,
committee.
Pierre?
I've chaired this committee for 4 times, and I've chaired the Select Board Committee for 4 times, and I know what the duties of the chair are. The chair is to represent their board that they're representing. And when you do that, sometimes you have to go against your better judgment or what you feel is right or wrong, and that's the question I'm asking you.
As the chair, when I'm representing as the chair, I will always represent this committee's interests and not my personal interests.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Samantha?
If either one of you obviously is going to be elected and the other one isn't, if you were not elected, would you be interested in running, like being elected to the vice chair position? I guess that's one for both of you.
If I was elected chair, I would entertain all nominations for vice chair. Obviously, I mean, my vote as a member of the committee is my own personal vote, and I wouldn't take a
What-
position until the vote.
Yeah, I guess I mean, if the committee voted for Melanie to be chair and someone nominated you to be vice chair, would you accept that nomination?
I would absolutely be willing to
Okay,
work with
and
the chair.
The same question goes to you. If Joe is elected to chair, would you like entertain a nomination for vice chair?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, but my goal at this time is to remain chair. And that's what's driving me for this particular nomination and vote. Should that not occur, I would also consider vice chair as an alternate, and I could work with anybody, especially Joe, who's done a fantastic job in the past. Are there any other questions? Yes, Lauren?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is for Mr. Alexander. We did have a bit of turnover in the last few years. I was curious if you had, when you were chair, it's tough to do a new year, right? And to lead and to learn all the appropriate steps. Were you available to mentor Jeff or to help Melanie? Because I've noticed this coming in as a new person, it's difficult. It's difficult to learn what we're supposed to do, the motions we're supposed to make, and the responsibilities. Were you available in a mentorship role to either of the chairs that followed you?
I mean, I was the one who nominated Jeff for chair, so I was definitely willing to mentor him. I mean, I am always willing to help anybody in town. I've been an open book in all the hats I wear, make sure that I'm present. I mean, I have personally not been asked by Melanie to help her with parliamentarian stuff. I just know my personal experience. I chair a committee in Concord that you're able to entertain all this stuff and you're able to make sure that everybody's voices are heard. And I'd be able to make sure that the motions that are made are the correct motions at the correct time. So if the answer is, I'm always willing to work with anybody from that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Hearing none. Now you put me on the spot, Joe, just while you said that, and I'm standing here, sitting here. I'll take a motion to vote for chair.
No, I think you would just ask who, all those in favor of one person, raise their hand, that's all.
Okay. Joe, would you like to go first or second? I'll ask that.
I will lead it to the discretion of the chair.
All in favor of Joe Alexander for chair, raise your hand.
Oh, shoot.
You want to vote for yourself?
Vote for yourself.
Just leave them up.
Yeah. I hate that these are not. I'm missing somebody. Oh, Doug. Doug's name fell down, sorry. Doug, can you put your name back up?
You're deflated.
Well, just This isn't just a total vote, right?
Thank you, Peter, for your commentary, but I still need to put your names down. Thank you. Peter, Richard, Doug, Brian, Frank, Joe. I'm missing somebody. 2 Richards, that's why. 2 Richards. Thank you. Yep, everybody.
Thank you.
That would be the total. Be
And then,
doesn't matter, because that would be the
It's a majority.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that would be
1,
8
2, 3,
to
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, 8 to 7. That would be the majority
and
vote.
1 abstaining, so that would be Joe.
Well, are we,
still have
hold
to
on,
vote.
Madam Chair, are we taking a roll call for just the people that voted for me, or a roll call for everyone that voted for you?
Has to be both.
Which I would argue that we should
Yep.
put down both,
Yep.
so.
Okay.
I would call the vote for yourself as well.
Okay, so at this time, we'll take votes for Melanie Renfrew Hebert for chair. All in favor?
6.
Yep. I think Lauren's abstaining. Yep. All those abstaining. Is Lauren abstaining?
Are you abstaining, Lauren?
I am.
Okay, you can put your hand up.
Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you. So it's 8 to 7 for Joe, and congratulations.
Thank you, appreciate it. Well, and I want to thank you for the work you've done, and I'm certainly willing to work with you on other issues or entertain other positions that you'd like on the committee as well. Thank you, Stacy, for your leadership as well. Appreciate it. So the next order of business is election for vice chair. So the chair will entertain motions for, or nominations for vice chair. Would anyone like to, vice chair?
I'll nominate Stacy for vice chair.
Okay, nomination for Stacy Belnor, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Can we nominate ourselves?
If you would like to,
Is that
yes.
just like-
Oh,
is that
absolutely, you can
fine?
nominate yourself.
Like-
Yep.
I would love to nominate myself.
Okay, so
Samantha
nomination for
Kearns.
Sam Kearns. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second that, okay. The chair would like to nominate Frank Hobbs for vice chair. Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
Second. Okay, so we have, Allison?
Could I nominate Lauren Dukas?
There's a nomination for Lauren Dukas. Is there a second?
I'll second that as well.
Perfect. So I don't have a vice chair right now. So I would say that I have Sam Kearns, I have Lauren Dukas, I have Stacy Belmore,
Who seconded Frank? Was it Brian? Thank you.
and I have Frank Hobbs. So at this point, I'd like to open up the floor if we can start with Lauren. Do you accept the nomination?
I do accept it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, do you want a minute to?
Sure.
Speak.
Thank you very much for the nomination. I think I've always asked questions, which I would continue to do and support the chair. I am enjoying learning more about the rules and the proper procedures. I think also at public meetings, I am not afraid to voice when I feel that the rules are disordered, and I would like to continue to learn. I have attended the municipal budget committee meetings on governance, and I have researched and read, and I will continue to do so to make sure that we do things according to precedent and smoothly and fairly. So we all need to work together and get through all of the line items together. So I would like to learn more about this board and position. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Samantha?
Hi, I'm Samantha. So the reason that I nominated myself is because Budget Committee is something that I'm incredibly passionate about, and I would love to learn more about this position and this committee. I know a lot about Robert's Rules of Order. I know this past year I've been just kind of listening and observing, and I'm definitely excited to get more involved. Last year I only missed one meeting, and so I got a pretty good attendance record. But yeah, this is something that I take a lot of interest in serving the community. Thanks.
Thanks, Sam. Stacy?
Thank you. This is something I'm very passionate about, is the Budget Committee and politics in Goffstown in general. Goffstown means a lot to me. I think I've done a very good job as the vice chair. I'm extremely type A, if you haven't noticed. I have diligent notes. I keep diligent notes here. I tend to nudge Melanie to remember some things. I think I'm not afraid to speak up. I think you all notice that in these meetings. I will ask the tough questions of members here, of people that come here, and I think that's important to both the members of this group, and also the department heads that come in here and present their budgets, because that's what we're essentially here to do, is ask the tough questions of them coming in here and what they're presenting to us. But I also think that we've all gotten along very well in this committee, and I think it's because of the members we have here, and I think how well we've gotten along. But I also think that I bring humor, and I try to bring some social aspect to this, because it isn't all, doesn't all have to be serious all the time. I think that we can have some fun and cross each other's lines and show the community that we are people that care for this community. So I've also worked for the state for many, many, many years, working in budgets. I know what it's like to stand in front of people and talk about a budget, or stand up for a committee that I always agree with. So I don't have a hard time doing that stuff. So I think in this role, I fit very well. I wasn't interested in the chair position. I'm more of a disposition person. So this is something I've really enjoyed doing for the last few months, because we were elected halfway through this last year, and I would like to continue doing it. I think I've proven myself here, so I'd like to continue doing it. I hope to grow in politics in Goffstown, not just in the Budget Committee. So I think this is where I've started. And I thank you all for at least getting me here at this point. So
Thank you, Stacy.
No problem, Joe.
Frank.
I love Goffstown. I'm virtually a lifelong resident. I love a lot about it. Not just the scenery, not just the fact that I've lived here, but part of it is how this committee can work together. And I've seen good examples of working together when we needed to or had to, even though we come from different, maybe, perspectives sometimes. I think last year in the Budget Committee, I think people realized that I am open and happy to discuss ideas with anybody. To have a polite discourse, which I believe is the foundation of good progress. I'm a financial advisor by trade. I'm familiar with accounting, finance, project management. I have a 4.5-year-old little girl, so I have a vested interest in the town of Goffstown and making sure it's as productive as possible. I have a good relationship with Joe Alexander. We've worked on projects and perspectives before, more informally, and I'll do a good job. Last year, I did not miss a meeting, and that's my level of commitment. So, thank you.
Thank you, Frank. So at this time, are there any questions for any of the nominees for vice chair?
I have one question,
Go ahead, Peter.
and it's for Stacy. She was just a little while ago, when we were doing a vote, taking names, when voting by rules is done by a show of hands. Now, if you're going to, if you were to continue to be the vice chair, would you still be writing people's names down and how they voted? Even though the rules, the Budget Committee Rules of Order, it says voting is done by a show of hands. It says nothing about recording the vote of who voted for what.
I'll do whatever the chair tells me
No,
to do.
I'm just saying, you just did that at this meeting, and when I asked about it, you kind of jumped on me because the rules are the rules. And just kind of like you just made up your own rule as we were going around.
That's how we did it last year. That's how we.
So
until
these rules are
someone-
new and we weren't following them last year?
We were not
No,
following
we-
last year, Peter.
Okay.
And you were at many meetings that we did it that way, and you didn't correct me then, so.
Well, because I wasn't on the meeting, I wasn't on the board.
But you want to correct me now, so that's,
Well, because you corrected me. Let's call it what it is, okay?
Okay.
I asked you a question. I'm sorry, Joe, go ahead.
It's all good. So are there other questions for vice chair nominees? I don't see any. So I'm going to call the vote. I'm going to start. I'm just going to go around, okay? So I'm going to start. All those in favor of Lauren Dukas, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. All those in favor,
How many would it be?
Oh,
put mine
four.
up.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. All those in favor of Sam Kearns, raise your hand.
That's the best part.
Perfect. So I have 2. All those in favor of Stacy Belmore, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. And all those in favor of Frank Hobbs, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Guess you need my vote. I'm gonna go 5. Just to break a tie. So
5 and 5, yeah.
yeah. So at that point, congratulations, Frank Hobbs, in being elected vice chair. So at this point, we have 2 agenda items: appointment of a CIP representative and appointment of State Space Needs Committee. I do know that Lauren, you were CIP rep, right? Or Space Needs?
Yes, actually, I was both.
You were both. Can you please give us an overview of what those positions entail? So our rules say that there's a simple election process. I'm going to, I'm happy to entertain it this meeting, or I'm happy to entertain it next meeting, depending, but whatever the committee decides, but I would like at least if you could give a little overview on both those positions.
Sure, Mr. Chair. The reason I was both of the representatives was, like the first year I had started, it was they asked if anyone was interested, and then you said, if there's multiple people, we'll break down the vote, and then, so I didn't just take over everything. And I think with Jeff, the former chair, he was on the Space Needs Committee, and then he left, so there was some bouncing. But the Space Needs Committee was actually dissolved when we made our presentation to the school board in October. It was a community effort that I believe was started before COVID, and it got interrupted with COVID, to gather community stakeholders to measure interest and possibilities for the populations at our schools and the infrastructure. There was a lot of interesting information. The school board drafted a study that we got the information on. We presented the findings, and I believe what's happening now is the school board is, and I'm sorry, I don't wish to speak for you, Mr. Talbot, is...
You're doing great.
It wants a representative to be ready in case they are starting this group again, because I believe they're starting some more in-depth talks, but I'm really not sure. They kind of ended it, so I think it was just, I don't know if this is just to have someone that might be interested. But as far as I know, that committee had dissolved. For CIP, that's the Capital Improvements Plan. It's a subcommittee of the Planning Board. We meet, the CIP meets throughout the summer. I actually do have the dates. They're Thursdays. They start June 1st, so it's coming up. That is, we go through the matrix out for the planned expenses for each department, on kind of to level, budgeting requests and to level, tax increases. Like the library was on there for the last several years. It was on there last year. This year, the last I saw the matrix was like the Barnard Pool was going to be discussed and such. So you get similar presentations, but more of a long look at things coming up. It is a summer commitment. It starts at 6 at night, and sometimes it's an hour or two. And then I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dates planned, or 5 dates planned through the summer. And if anyone wanted to check schedules, I do have them from the planning board. And there's a board presentation September 14th where we get together, present what we were given to the planning board. It is the CIP's charge as well to possibly move items different years to say, we think that this should go a few years later, or I think we need to bump this up in priority. So they do have that movement ability, and then to present the final matrix to the planning board for them to vote on.
Great, and so the expectation is that the CIP rep would give kind of a synopsis of those, not 6 meetings, but like enough, right, to give us kind of an idea of what moved around and what's coming up the pipeline. So I appreciate your work on that committee. Does the committee want to elect a CIP representative right now, or do we want to wait? I'll entertain people that are interested, or I'm happy to, go ahead, Peter.
The meeting starts in June, right?
Yeah.
June 1st is the
So you don't
first
have another
one?
meeting before.
We do not have another meeting, that's right.
So somebody would have to be appointed tonight.
Okay, So I'm happy to entertain that.
I'm sorry, I just want, you had asked for, sorry, Mr. Chair, you had asked for what the committee wanted to do. I was just voicing it seemed to work well when we sort of voiced that, I'd be interested in that, and
Yeah.
then how it worked well the first few times we did it, where you were like, all right, well, no one else wanted it, Lauren, I guess you're up. So,
Okay, so I'm going to strike the Space Needs Committee representative until we actually have a committee formed, because I don't think that we don't have a charge on it yet, so why would we pick somebody for a committee that it doesn't exist yet?
I can't speak to him.
Yeah, no.
I can. We don't have a committee.
Right, so if we don't have a committee, there's no need to appoint somebody to just show up in a
If
room,
one
a dark
opens
room
up,
by themselves.
we'll make sure to notify this board, of course, for participation.
Perfect. So is there anybody interested in serving as CIP representative? All right, I have Lauren and Sam.
Are you doing an election for this, or are you appointing someone?
This is what the rules of order say. We haven't technically adopted the rules of order for this year, so, and the meeting is next month. So if we can make a motion to allow the chair to appoint somebody, if you'd like to, email an interest in it, or we can have an election right here, right now.
Well, I guess my question is, last year I know we just did an appointment.
I think I was the
There-
only sucker that, oh, sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't think we had an election. I really don't.
We had an election for CIP rep,
We did? Okay.
so,
Oh, the first year.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just hung up on the wording of appointment versus election.
okay, so, go ahead, Frank.
Can I make a motion that we allow the chair the ability to select the CIP representative from the interested parties?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay. So the motion and a second. Do you want to discuss that, Frank?
Yeah, I just, I think it's important that the chair would have that flexibility. I'm sure if anybody had a burning desire to be the CIP representative, I'm sure they could convey that. And I think this might be a little bit more streamlined, given the fact we're not going to have another meeting. So in essence, either Joe or our chair is going to be entrusted to appoint someone, or we're going to have an election today, because there isn't a meeting until
There
June,
will
right?
be.
Okay. So I would, that's why I made the motion.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Lauren?
Discussion sort of apropos to that, but we have a budget committee rules of order, but we haven't voted on that yet, correct? So we're operating outside of our anticipated rules of order that we'll be adopting?
That's correct. I'm just going down on the agenda that was made for me.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. If we're going to be looking at these rules, that is in direct opposition to the draft, the last revised draft that we have on April 19th, 22. I'm good either way, but I just, if we have a revised rule, I think we should at least stick with it.
Okay.
I don't
Go ahead, Peter.
understand the question, because this isn't, you don't have to elect this, because if you look at the election of the chair and other officers, according to this doesn't say that somebody can't be appointed to a committee. It says other officers that the committee, there's not going to be an officer. It's just going to be a representative. It's not an officer of a committee.
But if you go down a couple
next
to selection
paragraph.
of budget committee representatives to other boards, it does expressly state in the
Oh, I'm
back that
sorry, I didn't see
it-
that part.
Yeah, no, I did, I also was like, oh, wait, it does actually go through with, is there any interest? And if we have a couple of people, interested parties, then we would vote. It at least has the benefit of being expedient.
That's, the select board operates where the chairman appoints, we express to the chair of the select board, and then the select board appoints the people. We don't have an actual election. The chairman appoints the members to those boards. That's how we work.
And Jared, how does the school board work?
The school board is not this board, but we work very similar to what Select Member Peter Trajanta stated. We, the chair will accept passions from members to say what subcommittees do you want to work on. Budget committee, there's only one right now. There could be more in the future. And then from there, if there's further deliberation or debate, but it is at the pleasure of the chair for the school board, which is not this board.
Okay, right. Thank you. Danielle, is there anything in the RSAs that say that, I know the chair and vice chair, there's like an RSA there that says how we have to govern ourselves.
The RSAs only address the official officer roles of the committee. The rest falls to the committee's rules and procedures. So it's up to you if you'd like to go
And I
off
know you're not a lawyer, but we're a new committee.
Yes.
Are we governed by these rules, or can we?
You are until amended, so if you'd like to rearrange your agenda, that is something you can do to address the rules first.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I-
Stacy.
We've done it in the past by election, correct?
Right.
Have we always done it that way?
I've been on this committee, Richard, maybe you can help. We haven't, it's typically been the chair. There was 2 years
say-
ago that we started electing
We
them.
started electing only a couple of years ago,
Right.
correct? And then before that, it was the
It was
appointed.
chair discretion,
Okay,
usually based on interest.
right. And you accepted emails, you said, correct? And then,
yeah.
or they accepted emails and then they chose after that?
Yeah, and this would
Okay.
be probably the process, I would say, anybody that's interested in CIP rep would email
Anything.
me in the next week, and then I will have Catherine send an email to the
Right.
committee on who I appoint.
Okay.
But I'm happy to entertain.
So
Go ahead, Peter.
I guess, following what Danielle said, I think it would be, you would have to suspend this discussion on this particular and go to the Budget Committee Rules of Order, and then go to the Selectmen of Budget Committee Representatives and change that.
Yep.
If we wanted to do it this way. If so, we'd have to reverse the order of the thing.
Okay, Jared.
As a matter of procedure, and I'm sure there's another member that would state if this is incorrect, but we have a motion on the table, we can make the motion. If we have another reaffirmation of this, it would supersede the motion that's currently on the table. Or we can amend this and then pass it. We don't need to suspend the current vote if we are looking to continue forward with the motion as it is.
There is a motion, right?
There is a
So-
motion, yeah.
There's a motion that's been
Where's the main
seconded, which the motion, if I recall, and has been recorded, is Mr. Hobbs made a motion to allow the chair to make the appointment of this position, which was seconded. That is currently on the floor, and all of our discussion should be towards that.
Right. So,
I agree with, except that our rules, these rules, don't allow that.
These rules are not in existence at this point in time.
Okay, so that's what you're going on the old rules, that these are supposedly are the old rules, right?
These are not the
Well,
rules.
if they're the old rules, then they're the standing rules. If this was revised April 19th,
Right.
2022, this is the standing rule then, right? Correct?
So that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
we're still operating under these rules.
Okay.
so.
Would that be
right-
correct?
Yep,
I
so
think-
right now,
I
Frank,
think so.
I'm gonna rule your motion out of order for a minute, and we're gonna move on to review committee rules and procedures. So now I will entertain, has everybody had an opportunity, this was sent via email, has everybody had the opportunity to review these rules, and are there any amendments to the rules? I'll give a minute or two.
Can I ask a question
Go
while
ahead.
we? Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for recording the vote, the chair will count the vote, names of those in the minority will be specified for the record. So even if we're doing a hand count, I'm just trying to get my rules down. The minority names are the ones recorded at all hand counts, even if we don't have to do an individual eye.
That's how we've done it. I mean, we're
Okay.
definitely allowed to govern ourselves how we see fit, as long as it fits in the
Yeah.
RSA's. So
Yeah.
If you'd like to amend that, I'm certainly willing to do
No,
that.
I just wanted to make sure I was reading it.
That's how it's been. Typically, the
Correctly, Mr.
minority
Chair.
is the one recorded, and if
Thank
there's
you.
abstentions.
I guess how would you know that it's the minority? Oh, sorry. How would you know that it's the minority until the entire vote has processed?
The minute taker and the vice chair would record that after the vote.
You know what I mean? Like,
Well, you wouldn't know you're in the minority until you're in the minority, you know?
Right.
Unless you
You know,
count the vote.
you get to the
Mr.
end,
Chair, I
and
just
go, oh,
want to
here's the
clarify.
Go ahead,
minority.
Laura.
So that's why, I'm clarifying partially
Yeah.
for me, but in case anyone else does. So this is why Stacy recorded the first names, because that may have been the minority, but we didn't know until it all happened.
So, right, that's
Okay.
a good point.
Okay.
Well,
I mean,
to be
unless
fair,
you're doing
Stacy
quick
had no
math.
idea knowing, right? So,
So that
do we want to
contradicts,
continue to record only the minority? Do you want to continue to record, do you want to record everyone? Do you want to record no one? I mean, it's up to us. Go ahead, Laura.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if this is a motion or if I have to motion it, that we record the minority, but in doing that, understanding that you're actually recording everyone's vote, really? Because you don't know you're the minority until all of the votes.
I think a clarify.
Right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Samantha.
Sorry, I think just to like clarify that, it would be like, the chair will count the vote and the name, and like all names will be recorded for the record. That would simplify that, that would amend that into.
Mr.
Okay, go
Chair,
ahead,
because
Laura.
we don't know, say two people end up abstaining, even if you're doing quick math in your head, like, oh, okay, that was 8, we have 7, like, it still may throw what the minority is, so you
Right.
kind of have to just record it.
Right.
I don't know if it needs to be that specific, if we want it to be that specific.
Well, we ran into that problem 10 minutes ago,
Right.
so.
Why is it necessary to do that?
Point of order, Ms.
Go ahead.
Stevens
All right.
made a motion, and I believe we have to wait for understanding if there's a second before discussion.
There's been no motion.
I wasn't sure if
Well,
it
I
was-
heard making a motion. so that
Yeah,
was
I
me.
wasn't sure if it was allowed to be a motion at this point.
Yeah, I'll entertain motions on the Budget Committee rules
Okay,
of
then I
order.
do, yes, Jared's correct. I would like to make the motion
Okay, you want to make a motion to what?
record all names.
Record all names?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
In favor, opposed, and abstained.
Yep,
I'll second that.
just
All
for the
right.
record.
And the absences are recorded in the minutes, so everything's recorded.
Yes.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. Is there discussion on that motion? Peter,
Why? What's the reason for that?
Stacy?
As someone who's been counting the votes for the last many months, it becomes very difficult to track who is counting, who's voting for, against, abstaining, and it's hard, it is very difficult to track the moving pieces and things change. I think 2 years ago, we had an issue where there was a miscount, and it was easy for us to go back and verify by the names that we had, to go back and figure out who voted for what. We could pull the tapes, but we could also just reach out to the people and figure out how people voted that way. So it was easier having the names written down
Okay.
that way.
Peter, go
Well,
ahead.
under RSA 32, is that required?
I'm giving you my discussion point. I don't know.
Well, we operate, Budget Committee operates under RSA 32. It's pretty specific.
Can I?
Go ahead,
Mr.
Laura.
Chair?
Yep.
I think even if it's not required, we can choose to function that way. And I think it makes more sense as an all or nothing. We're either recording names altogether or we're not, and it's a simple count.
So the one question I would like to ask is, does there need to be a recording for when we open the, when we like adjourn, well, I adjourn it, but anytime we approve minutes, anything like that, like simple votes that we usually take that are unanimous, all of those votes are recorded now. Go ahead.
My question would be, what would be the reason not to?
Okay.
I mean, that's how I have done it, because that's the way it was. No one trained us. There was no one that mentored us. No one stuck around and taught us how to do this. That's how we have done it, and no one has had a problem with that yet in the year I've done it. No one has come forward and claimed an RSA that were out of order. No one's had an issue with it, so I'm wondering what would be the reason not to. It's actually helped us in the end to count votes and to correct things that where there's been errors. So that's, I guess, my question, what would, and I've done it when we've closed meetings, open meetings, the chair vote, all that stuff I've counted. So I guess my question would be, why not?
Melanie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was also brought to my attention by the minute taker that they are not able to see every hand that goes up. So if there is some question about which way the vote went and how many there were, it was easy to go back to the paper and give the answer, so that they could make sure that the meeting minutes were correct,
That's a great point.
because they can't see that whole end.
Doug?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just start throwing this out there as a suggestion, like if there's a vote, let's say like during the meeting, someone seconds it, obviously, it seems kind of tedious to record everyone's vote, so if it's unanimous, could we just write unanimous and that's sufficient and that kind of thing?
Okay, so would you suggest amending it to the vote is recorded unless it's unanimous?
Yes.
I'll second
Would you
that.
be okay with amending that motion?
Yeah, yep.
All right, great point. So there's a motion, amended motion, and a second on the floor. Is there more discussion on this motion? All right. Go ahead, Richard.
I think you have a set of rules, and you should follow the set of rules. You shouldn't start changing at this point in time.
This is we have this discussion on rules of order every year, once a year. This is the one time we amend the rules, so I agree, but this is the time to do it if we're going to.
Well, I read these, and I came here to vote on this.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Scott?
I just took a look at these, and the last paragraph says emails. And again, I'll defer to Peter and Jared on some of this, and certainly Danielle, if you can chime in, but budget committee members may distribute emails to the committee for the purpose of sharing information only. I think that's dangerous, because it could violate right to know when you're sharing emails. And what one considers sharing and what one considers influencing is a very fine line. I personally believe, and I would recommend to the Budget Committee, that all email communications that get distributed either through the Town Hall office or the chair.
Scott, I'm sorry, point of order.
I'm just gonna say
motions on
real
the
quick,
floor,
I'm just getting
One on one thing?
this first, and then we
Okay.
can go to
I
something
wasn't sure if
else.
you were doing all.
Nope.
I apologize.
All right, I'm going to call the
Okay.
vote on this amended motion. Does everyone know what it is?
Can you restate it?
All right, so the votes will be recorded unless it's a unanimous vote. Danielle, do you have that? Perfect. All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so it's 14-1. All right, 14-0-1. Yes. Perfect, so that motion carries. So the next one I want to go to.
Question,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair. So in light of those rules, that vote would not need to be recorded?
Well, we just
No,
made,
Or the members' names would not?
starting right now, okay?
Right. So 14-0-1, because there was one abstention, and technically it would need to be recorded?
Yes.
Okay. If I may ask, who abstained?
Jared.
Jared, okay.
All right.
Welcome to the
Thank you,
Vice
Jared.
Chair. Welcome to the Vice Chair, Frank Hobbs.
All right, so next I'm gonna entertain more motions. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to introduce a motion to modify the selection of Budget Committee representatives. I would like it to read that instead of the committee will then use a simple nomination and election process, I would like it to be changed to the chair shall appoint.
Okay, is there a second on
second.
that? All right, so Lauren made a motion, Stacy seconded, so if I'm reading you right, it would be the end of, it'd be on the top of the second page, end of the first paragraph. You would scratch, the committee will then use simple nomination election process, select a budget committee representative for the assignment. It will say, the chair, so it says chair will ask committee members who are interested, and then the chair will make an appointment
Yes.
for a representative. Okay. Is there any discussion on that?
Just the committee members who are interested will show interest to the chair, and the chair will pick that.
Yep. Do you want to, do we need to write that, or we just?
Well,
I mean, it says the chair will ask members who are interested. So,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, my apologies. My motion was to include those items. That's just the motion that I'd like to make, and to, I would like the interest left in. I didn't want my intention to be misconstrued. I think that the chair should still take interest.
Very simple. Express interest to the chair, and the
Yeah.
chair will pick.
Okay, great. Any more discussion? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion, raise your hand. Those opposed? And abstentions. All right, so it's 14-1-0. Everyone was, Allison DeCesare was in the minority, but everyone else voted in the affirmative. Stacy. All right, any other amendments to the rules? I know Scott just brought something up. Jared, go ahead.
It's not an amendment, it's a statement. just based on what Lauren said there, should we as a committee reaffirm what the chair has decided for assignments or not? I know that in school board, we reaffirm what the chair put down for their committees. I don't know if the select board, you have a vote on that, but that's something that I think allows any kind of explanations to occur or changes to override the chair also to occur at that time. I'm just making a statement, not a motion.
Like a committee approval? Is that
Yes,
what you're saying?
it's a straight yes or no, do we approve of it?
All right, go ahead, Peter.
I agree, I don't necessarily agree, but I understand what Jared's saying, but that adds another layer to appointments. In this particular case, where the meetings start June 1st and we don't have another meeting, we wouldn't have the opportunity to reaffirm, as you're saying.
If I may? So I agree with what you're saying for the one CIP position that we have, but again, this is an opportunity where we're setting the tone for other committees that might be set up. Maybe there's going to be a committee for police station, for space needs, for fire station. Maybe the school board will have another committee that we ask the budget committee to be a part of. This is just setting the mode for, okay, we're talking about CIP, but expanding it to other potential committees that might be formed. The chair from this, from what's already been decided, will appoint an individual should the committee be able to reaffirm what that appointment was at the next available meeting. Just, that's the question I have.
Allison?
Exactly what you just brought up is the reason that I voted against that. I personally find it a little bit odd that the leader person who was voted on by only half gets to now choose, and right, it's one assignment at this point, but when there's a whole bunch, or maybe there's more interest, you're now getting into a potential that it's your favorites who get, and I'm not saying that just for you, whoever is is the leader at that point, could be choosing favorites, and there's no checks and balances to make sure that the rest of us all agree with who you've assigned. And as far as today's assignment, personally, we just voted for, I know some of us are new, we just voted for the chair and vice chair on a whim. I don't know why we couldn't have just voted the same way for CIP on a whim. I mean, I know we don't have another meeting, but why didn't we just do a vote right now for between the two ladies who are interested? And we all would have moved on. That's where I was coming from with my no vote, and Jared's kind of bringing up what bothered me about that idea.
Thank you. Laura?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I guess I have a question is what would that look like? So say someone gets an appointment, we do not affirm it, then what happens?
I would make an appointment until it's affirmed.
Okay. I don't know if it was as simple as that. Yeah.
Until a majority affirms, like,
Okay.
majority present.
Sure.
Anything else? Melanie?
Thank you. If that's the case, Mr. Chair, should that also be written in there? That if it's not affirmed, it will need to continue in some way?
I think it would be redundant, but I'm happy to include that. I don't think that's necessary. I think I would just make the appointment and then the committee says no, and then I make another appointment until they say, I don't think we need to put it in, but we can if the committee agrees. Okay, so, yep, go ahead, Susan.
Well, that kind of feels like you're making your own rule, if it's not in there. That kind of feels like you're just kind of making your, right?
All the rule would say is that the chair makes an appointment and it's affirmed by the budget committee. If the budget committee doesn't affirm it, the chair will make another appointment.
But does that, I think what Melanie's saying is a good point, that it should be written there somewhere. Otherwise, I'm just thinking of future,
Yeah.
I'm a very type A person, right? If that's not written somewhere, it then almost becomes like, well, is the chair just making their own rule that we continue making appointment to?
Okay.
I'm just saying I think it should be.
Laura and then Jared.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm wondering if then, are we just voting? So should we just be voting instead of affirming an appointment and not affirming a different appointment? Should we just vote? Maybe we reconsider.
Jared.
So as it states now on what's being presented, what's already been voted on, the chair appoints the individual, and that is all that it is at this point.
That's the motion on the floor.
No, that's the motion that's already been voted on
Voted on it.
and passed.
Yes.
the statement I made was, do we want to have another piece in this to say, should the group reaffirm what the chair said? And I did not make a motion, there's not a motion on the floor, so, I mean, I put it in there because there was some debate and dialogue, and I appreciate what Allison said, and I'm in agreement with her. But there is no motion, and on the circumstance where if we did say, okay, we would reaffirm or not reaffirm as part of our procedures, if we do not reaffirm, the rules state the chairperson would appoint somebody until they're basically reaffirmed by the budget committee.
So I say no.
Peter, sorry, Stacy.
I don't know why we're adding another layer to this, because it's always worked in the past, at least at the select board and this board previous to a couple, 3 years ago, that chair made the appointment. Somebody expressed they wanted to be on the committee, and you have an interview, kind of like we just did, and, okay, I want to be on it because of this, and I want to become on it because of this, and then the chair holds those discussions with those people that are involved. That way you don't have any personalities. Somebody was worried about a personality thing. That way you don't have any personalities. You only just one-on-one, more or less, instead of having 13 people trying to make the decision. I think is kind of just putting another layer in it.
Okay, Stacy.
Well, and that's why I say the no, because once you add the extra sentence of if the board is going to affirm, you're now setting up another language to then have a challenge to that paragraph. And I'm thinking of like in our legals in the state, when we add another layer to say, if we don't affirm, now you have to have an answer to that if we don't affirm language. So I think we leave that out because it's not necessary. If you've appointed, I think Allison makes a great point, which I didn't think about in my vote, but if we voted that you appoint, you've appointed. And I think that's where we landed. I don't think we need to add anything else, is what I kind of meant by that.
Okay, so does anyone want to make a motion to add that language, or are we good to leave it the way it is? Okay.
I think we're good.
Thank you, Allison, for bringing that up. Are there any other amendments to the Budget Committee rules of
Well,
order?
Scott brought up the email.
The emails, yeah.
I agree with that. Any questions or communications should go through the chair.
Okay.
It
If
does
the chair
say-
has a question, if it's on the town side, they can address it with Danielle.
Peter, are you
School-
making a motion?
Well, yeah, I'll make that motion.
All right, so what's exactly the
That
motion?
email communications go through the chair. And if the chair has a problem, he can go to the department representatives.
Second.
I just
what
Uh,
don't
it says.
understand what's different.
That's what it says.
That is also the way I read it. I would say budget committees members may distribute emails to committee for the purpose of sharing information only. Do we just want to amend from committee to the chair to distribute to the committee?
Right.
So on the top line of the emails portion, change committee to the chair to distribute. And the chair may distribute through Catherine Fisher or other staff.
That stops, me talking to him, and cutting you and you and you out of a discussion. Whereas if it goes, any email communications go through the chair can distribute to the rest of the board if he finds it pertinent to our responsibilities.
Okay, Jared.
Is there a motion on the floor right now?
I just
Peter made
that
the motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Fran seconded
Can you
it.
repeat the motion?
Yep, so, all right, so the sentence is going to read, Budget Committee members may distribute emails to the chair, who then distributes to the committee for the purpose of sharing information only.
Just
Go
a
ahead,
question.
Stacy.
Can you define what you mean by emails? Emails from the town to the budget committee members, or emails internally? So I've gotten emails from the town before to me.
Yes.
Do I then have to give them directly to you, or am I then bringing them to the commit, I'm wondering what sorry, I'm type A. What are we meaning by emails here?
My intention was internally.
You're meaning internally?
Right, because you're always going to get emails from the school side or from the town side that are given to the budget committee,
Right,
And any communication from me will come from Catherine,
right.
who sends out the emails about calling a meeting or any additional information that we need. Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we have a motion on the floor, but for the purpose of discussion, as we read through the rule as it stands, if anyone has any questions or comments via email, please transmit them to the chair only. That's pretty much what we're talking about,
Right.
correct? And then, so I know there's a motion on the floor, but I think we might want to, I don't know if we actually could amend it to just strike the first part. Budget committee members may distribute emails to the committee for the purpose of sharing information only. Maybe just strike it, because it goes on to say, if you got questions, chair only. If we have comments, chair only. Everything will come from our liaison from the town hall. That way, right to know laws are observed, and the public has access to everything that is getting sent out so for inspection. But questions go directly to chair.
Okay, Allison, and then Brian.
We also
Richard
point
has
out
the-
that the wording is funny, that it says it is recommended. That sounds like I have a choice. It's recommended that I do that, but it doesn't mean I have to. So if you guys are saying you have to do it through the chair, I think the word probably should be a little stronger than recommended.
So are you, if I understand you
Required?
correctly, right,
Yeah.
would you want to scratch it is recommended, or you want to change it to it is required?
I think changing it to is required would be fine.
Okay. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question is, what was the initial intent behind this section?
It's been in the rules of order. I understand RSA 91A, it's something we deal with a lot on the state level. I think it's just to cover the committee, to know that it's also in our rules of orders, but we are bound to follow RSA 91A. We can scratch the whole paragraph, and we'd still have to do the same thing pretty much the same thing that we're doing right now, so. Frank?
I think Lauren actually had a good idea. Hypothetically, if we just eliminated that first sentence, I think it gets a lot clearer as to what the intention was. So perhaps if Peter would modify his motion if he feels that's in line with it.
Yeah, but it still has to go, it's recommended that any distributions of the full committee be shared through the assigned staff liaison. My thing was it should go to the chair first, and then to the staff. He would communicate to the staff liaison, because we could all be sending staff liaison or information, and then if we just send it to Joe, then they get one
Right.
email instead of 14.
So two adjustments. Strike the first sentence and add chair to liaison.
It is required.
The motion, yeah, so the motion is to change that first sentence. Peter, would you like to amend your motion to scratch the first sentence and then right at the start of this paragraph say it is required?
Sure.
All right, so the motion's been amended.
It is required that any information needed to be distributed to the full committee be shared through the chair of the budget committee, and they will assign to the staff liaison, whether it's a town or the school. That make sense?
Okay, is there a second to that motion after?
I'll second it, so we can talk about it.
Great, let's talk about it.
Second just dies.
I'm gonna go around, so, Lauren,
Oh, I was, thank you. Part of the staff liaisons for the town and the school is to be available to the committee members and answer our individual questions. So if we put in that language of required to go through the chair, it actually seems like we won't have the ability as committee members to say, Scott, I didn't understand what you said the other day. Could you show me those spreadsheets? I
Just to
have to go
clarify,
to
this
you.
says full committee, so this is not just individual. So we just want to go, it's just, if you're going to distribute an email to the committee, the full committee, it goes through the staff or the chair, not an individual question.
I don't see full committee on
Joe,
here, Mr.
that's
Chair.
not what I'm saying.
Okay, no, please, yeah.
Let me,
right.
if there's everybody, if we all had the same question on something, right? And we all would send the same question different emails to Scott. And Scott's got to go ahead and respond to all of us. Whereas if we send it to Joe, Joe correlates that question and sends it to the appropriate person. He gets the answer and distributes to the whole committee. Instead of trying to do it individually to everybody.
May I?
Yeah.
Thank you. I understand, thank you for clarifying. I do object to that point, because I would like to have access to our liaisons to explain to me directly what my concern, what my question is. I mean, residents have the ability to do it, committee members should be allowed to do it.
I'm going to let Scott go. Gross.
All right, I'm only speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for Danielle. I will let you know how I deal with school board member inquiries. So the school board's power is derived from them acting as a body, not as individuals. So if Jared calls me or sends me an email and it's something that I can respond to like really quickly, no big deal, I respond to Jared or respond to his email super quickly. If Jared asks me for what would take me 3 hours to create a document, my response to Jared would be, Jared, I'm sorry, I cannot provide you with that information. If it's something that you want, no problem. Can you get board approval? And if the board votes for me to spend 3 hours doing that, I will gladly do it. It's very judgment, oriented, and more often than not, I have said to everybody here, even before, to Doug, before you were elected, if you ever need anything, give me a call. I want to help you guys make the right decisions, bottom line. But there is an exception. I can't spend, and I can't speak for others, but it's like super challenging to say, hey, I need this data and do X, Y, and Z. And that's that really super fine line of right to know, requesting information, being on a board, and I'm a private citizen, but I'm on the budget committee. It's all about that teamwork, and for the last 5 years that I've been involved with this group, I mean, whether it be Joe as chair, Melanie as chair, it's like, respond to pretty much anything. I haven't been challenged by oh my God, but I have to let you know that for the most part, the power that each of you individually has is really based upon the power of this group. And easy stuff, I know I'll respond to any one of you via email, phone call, no problem. But if it's like a bit more work, or if you repeatedly do it, and I find myself spending 3 hours a week responding to then it's like, well, I got to then have a conversation with the chair to say, you got to put the brakes on this. So it's ambiguous, but I just wanted to clarify how that goes.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I think with the exception of changing recommended to required, if this is the current way we've been functioning and it hasn't been a problem, then I'm not sure we should change it because we're fixing a problem that doesn't exist.
Just as some background information for the committee, I believe this section was put in there because there was at one time email swapping amongst members, which became enough of them to potentially create a quorum, which means it's no longer in compliance with RSA 91A. So we want to make sure we're following that, and so I believe the committee had put this in at the time to clarify if there's discussion, not so much on clarification of questions, but if there's discussion amongst members, it get distributed to the committee as a whole through, the town as staff liaisons and on behalf of the chair. So whenever this town sends out an email, I know, thinking back to about a year or two ago, we had a budget committee member that had questions specifically on the EMS fund. And they had asked for a series of questions and then asked for the chair's permission to have that distributed. So the town responded, gave the information to the chair and said, do we have permission to send this to the full committee so that the committee as a whole has the same information? And then it was discussed at the next meeting, but everybody had the same information. But the point of that section was really to eliminate discussion amongst members outside of the meeting group.
That's the way it's been for the last couple of years, I can remember.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I think it's I took it as information versus discussion until people started talking, and then I think it got a little more jumbled because that's initially how I read it. I don't know if anyone else read it that way. The sharing of information versus discussing, which can become a quorum and sticky very quickly.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had put my hand up because I do find a lot of value in having the information come through the town, questions to go directly to the liaison. And then, because they do more than just send that information out, they've been able to catch trends in lots of people asking the same question, in correlating information for us before they send it out, rather than send out multiple emails. So, and to get clarification and provide clarification to us. So going directly through the liaisons helps, I think helps us function better as a board. That's just my input from working with the office for the year.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, perhaps, and obviously it's not a motion, just thinking about alternate language, perhaps altering that first sentence to either completely remove it or just clarify it to say, email addresses will not be shared amongst members.
Your emails, you mean?
Yeah, like that the emails or the conversations are not inter-member, but rather town to group. Perhaps there's some better
Can I
language.
just ask Peter why you think it's better to go through the chair? Like, what in your experience?
As I said, the chair can correlate or correlate all the same questions, because a lot of times that's what it is, it's one question. And if everybody's emailing Danielle, then Danielle has to respond to each one of you, whereas if it goes to Joe, Joe can just do it. He knows who's looking for the information, so he can just go highlight the people he wants to send it to, who's questioning it. But I'm just trying to.
So your intention is more to make it easier on Danielle, not necessarily that you've seen a problem in the past where this has been a.
No, it's just, but there's also the issue, as it says, is right to know laws. If we start communicating, And remember, once you start communicating, you're opening yourself up to your own personal emails. So it's like I try to do all my stuff now with the town, through our town email. I don't use mine, because if I use mine and something comes up, illegal information, it could go right directly to your own personal email.
Which is a problem, because we should have our own town emails, which we don't, which is a whole other discussion, because you're right, Peter, because if we are subject to lawsuits, our personal emails in a 91A gets pulled.
Right.
So that's a whole different discussion. That is something that's very dangerous.
So just keep it clean, that's all.
To be fair, the town would be sued, but your email would be pulled.
But our personal emails would be pulled.
Mr. Chair, thank you. This may be too simple, but can we just add the language that everything has to be blind copied? That way there's no availability of discussion?
I don't think that releases you from the 91A.
Within the group?
It doesn't, no.
That doesn't release you from it.
91A is pretty open.
I'm going to go Brian and then Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the point, for me, I just create a separate domain, separate email address for my civic engagement, so just in case. Okay.
Doug?
Yeah, so some training that I went to that talked about this in particular did suggest that the 91A, if you did blind copy everyone, that's not necessarily subject to the 91A, which I think is a good idea. I agree with you, Lauren.
Not necessarily.
When everybody's put on the CC list, then it's more than likely, or most likely, it's subject to the 91A. I would suggest, would it make sense to include the liaisons, the chair? If you have a direct question to somebody, and I like the idea that Scott suggested, it's convenient to go right to the person if you have a question that's really clerical or whatever. It'd be nice to go right to the person. And maybe we just CC the chair and any liaison. Would something like that make sense? So that you could still have quicker, direct communication, and if you see a common question, then you could formulate something a little more formal.
I think we're getting into the weeds. I think we can just, I honestly, I'm okay leaving it the way it is. I think we've functioned the way we functioned for how I've been on the committee, and there hasn't been a problem. And if there is a problem, I think we can revisit it, but I don't think right now there is. And I'm gonna go Frank, and then Richard, do you have something? Okay.
I think we're all circling a very similar two things. I mean, there's 91A, and then there's convenience and not putting a million layers of the onion on one email. I mean, if we blind copy everyone, we've just increased our email output exponentially. What I was looking at the structure of the paragraph, which is what I think a lot of us are getting caught up in, and if we started hypothetically with the last sentence, the Budget Committee will follow RSA 91A with respect to right to know laws. Strike the first sentence, go to the second. It is recommended that any information needing to be distributed to the full committee be shared through the assigned staff liaison at Town Hall. Strike the next sentence. Third sentence, as all Budget Committee meetings must allow public access, we cannot hold discussions via email. Simple, straightforward, cut out the fat, and not open up any risk to 91A.
And
That's my 2 cents.
And I am okay letting the staff liaison deal with these emails instead of me personally, just with everything going on. So I think that's a good idea. Stacy?
I'm sorry,
I'm
don't-
sorry. I have Richard and then
Okay.
Stacy.
Frank said my point. So,
Okay,
yep.
great.
I don't disagree with you, except for starting with the Budget Committee will follow the RSA 91A laws. There's a lot encompassing that RSA 91A law that I don't think we want to start this paragraph there.
We'll follow all applicable 91A
I was
perhaps.
just going to say, put something in there to say that
Good
that's
point.
a
Okay, so.
very dangerous statute.
Peter, would you like to pull your
Well, I just
motion
want to
or
point out another thing, as Frank went through that. It says, if anyone has questions or comments via email, please transmit them to the chair only. It says that in here.
Yeah, I struck that from what I recommended, just because if anybody has a question, I think they know to contact Joe, and I think that's ambiguous.
So,
Until something comes up and it's a problem.
Then they call you.
Call me.
I'm okay with Frank's amended language. Peter, we still have a motion. Would you like to pull that motion, or would you?
Yeah, I'll pull the motion.
All right. Is there anyone that would like to motion? Would you like to make that motion, Frank?
Yeah, could I make the motion of restructuring the email paragraph to what I had recommended, starting with the last sentence, reading, "The Budget Committee will follow all applicable," inserting the all applicable RSA 91A with respect to right to know laws, then going to sentence 2, "It is recommended that any information needing to be distributed to the full committee be shared through the assigned staff liaison at Town Hall." Skip the next sentence. Third sentence is, "As all Budget Committee meetings must allow public access, we cannot hold discussions via email." End.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Melanie seconds that. Any more discussion on emails? I feel like we covered it all.
You want to take a vote? Oh.
Yes. All those in favor of Frank's motion? All those opposed? Abstentions? All right, so everyone voted in the affirmative except for Sam Kurtz.
I
So
think it's by
please-
the way it is.
Nice job, Frank.
It's so funny because we still point out who's in the minority anyways for the vote takers, so it's like the same stuff.
Yeah, just so Doug never gets his.
Never ashamed.
So the motion passes 14-1-0. Are there any other amendments to the rules of order? Can I get a motion to adopt the rules of order as amended?
I motion to adopt the rules of order as amended.
Laura makes the motion, Richard seconds it. Any more discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Abstentions? That was unanimous. Great job. I
There
love
it
that.
is. There's the unanimous.
Wow. Check that off the box. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda, okay, so I'm going to say about the CIP representative, if somebody is interested in being CIP representative, please email the staff liaison at Town Hall and they will communicate with me. Maybe write your interest, a couple things. I know there's 2 people that are interested, so feel free to send that to me and I will make that appointment. Okay. Upcoming training opportunities. Danielle, would you like to lead this?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
I'll just come back up here to make sure they can capture audio.
Thank you.
Okay, so upcoming training opportunities, we have 2 noted before you that we always like to bring to the committee's attention. The first being a general save the date for the annual New Hampshire Municipal Association Budget and Finance Workshop. That is to be held in September of 2023. The date has not yet been announced. They usually do announce that over the summer, and we will communicate that to the full committee via email. And then the second one is something that we started, I think, 3 or 4 years ago now. The Goffstown Budget Orientation. It's been kind of an in-house orientation held by Scott Gross and myself collaboratively in order to introduce all members to our information as far as how our accounts are structured, how you can read our budget reports that we generate from our various software platforms, as well as other information that we find very helpful to the committee members as they're going through the budgeting process in the fall. Typically, we've held that in the summertime. Last year it was in August, so I don't know if it is the chair's, interest to continue doing that, but if so, Scott and I could get together to schedule something perhaps in August of this year and then announce further details.
I think that would be helpful for new members, and there's like 5 or 6 new members, so that would be helpful.
Scott, are you willing to join me in that again this year?
Yeah, as long as you do it like the trestle or something,
Oh, I think I need to go again.
I think last year we did a speed race where we tried to see who could get through their sections faster. But we found that it's very helpful. And at first we had started only with the new members, but then we found after, that first year, everybody was saying, I'd kind of like to come. So it became more common. So if we start getting a lot of interest, I would, communicate that with the chair, and it could be your purview at that point if you want to call a meeting, if there's a majority of the people that want to attend.
I would say schedule it and
Okay.
get that ball rolling, and if there is a majority, I'm happy to schedule a meeting for that. And then the NHMA budget workshop, great, and you'll correspond with us regarding that when the date comes out. And
Yes.
is it, I remember that the town pays for that.
Correct. Yep,
For the
there is
members,
a
so it's
fee.
free
Yep,
for us.
and the town pays for it, so it's actually in the town budget, so please make sure to approve that budget line every year. But yes, we do cover that under the town side of the budget.
Great, thank you. Perfect, so next, I'm going to go to approval of minutes. So there was a meeting on January 10th, 2023. Some of us were here, some of us weren't, but would the committee like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes of the meeting held on January 10th, 2023.
Richard Manzo moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second is by Frank Hobbs. Is there discussion? Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually had an amendment.
Yeah, go ahead.
To the- to the-
It's open. Yep.
Okay, I didn't know if I had to amend before the motion to approve. On page 12 of 22, I did not say it was the president of the select board. I said it was the precedent of the select board.
Rewind the tape.
I just, it
I
hurt
believe
my
you.
vocabulary to read, that's all.
I believe you. So, Richard, are you okay
Yeah, I said
with that amended
amended, I
language?
think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So with that amended language, is there any more discussion? Sam?
So with our new recording the vote and who abstains and who is in favor, would that fall, like on page 13, for example, the vote was 770. Would our names be listed after that, like who was in favor and who was opposed?
Yes.
Okay.
But we're not retroactive, so we're not
Right,
going to go in.
That's totally fine,
Right.
yeah. That would be too difficult to track. But I was just wondering, like, for example.
For an example, there would be 7 voted in favor, 7 opposed.
And then the
It would-
names of who was in favor and who was opposed
Yes.
would be listed. Okay.
Per our rules adopted. Any more discussion? Right, all those in favor, please raise your hand.
We can't vote on them.
And typically the precedent, you can vote as a member of the committee, but typically if you weren't at the meeting, don't vote. All those opposed? Abstaining? Okay, so the people that abstain are Peter, Allison, Doug, Brian,
Olivia.
Olivia. So that's 5 abstentions, the rest voted in the affirmative to adopt the minutes. So with that, those minutes are adopted.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
Olivia did not abstain.
I was at the meeting.
Oh, yeah, you weren't a member of the committee.
Right.
Okay, you know what, so, all right, so Olivia voted in the affirmative for that. Awesome. So the next meeting, so this is determined by chair. I just want to open it up. Typically, we've been meeting on Tuesdays, and then during budget cycle, we've been doing Tuesdays and Thursdays. How has that been working? Is there a conflict with our new members? Sam?
Tuesdays are great.
I agree with that.
Great
I love
time.
Tuesdays.
Maybe even, I could even go like a little bit earlier. It's fine, you know.
Are you saying like 6?
6 is fine, 6:30 is fine.
Love that.
7 is kind of late. Definitely not 8. Definitely
No,
not 5.
It's too late for me. It's my
Yeah.
bedtime. Brian?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm going to have to figure out the timing of everything when we meet more regularly in the fall due to my other obligation at planning board on Thursdays.
Planning board's on Thursdays. Okay.
At 7.
And is that every?
Every other week.
Every other week?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So that's all.
Frank?
Tuesdays are horrible for me. Wednesday, I have the ability to accommodate, but they're very difficult. I would prefer Wednesdays or Thursdays, just preference.
Okay. Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's the same comment I made last year, as if we ran for these positions to be elected to these positions. These were the slots that a lot of us were said, okay, I can do that, I can commit to that. If we change the commitments and then we start missing a bunch of meetings, it feels a bit disingenuous, like we didn't know what the requirement was going to be ahead of time. It just seems like we might end up missing a bunch of meetings that we had planned out. So I'm on the side of, if this is what it's been scheduled, this is what we ran for and signed up for, particularly for some of the other appointments where they're very busy. I'd like to keep it this way.
Okay. It's been the tradition of the committee, but we're allowed to make those changes.
Oh, yeah, I'm just voicing a...
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to argue, I'm sorry. I was just voicing a preference.
Okay. And Danielle?
Just a point to bring up for last year's group, the meeting time had been moved back to 6 PM. That was a committee choice at the time. I do know that that's worked better for staff liaisons who are often coming straight here from their regular day. I know that at this particular meeting, there was discussion about holding it at 6, but there was some miscommunication and some emails went out that said 7 and some said 6. So we erred on the side of caution. We didn't want to miss anybody who was planning to arrive at 7. But I definitely would like the chair to clarify during this discussion the start times, which you're doing. I just wanted to make sure that that was captured as to why.
Anyone else? Lauren?
So,
Laura?
Mr. Chair, I think, in my mind anyway, it was Tuesday and Thursday because it's historically been that. It would continue that, but yeah, I would like to say 6 or 6:30 versus 7, if that was the plan.
Frank?
Yeah, if we're going to continue with the schedule, the later the better for me. So I prefer 7.
Okay. All right, so I've taken that in.
I prefer 7.
Okay. All right.
Is this something we?
I prefer 7 as well.
No, this is,
Oh, okay.
this is chair discretion. I might have Catherine send out some sort of like
Survey?
doodle or survey or something. Just to make sure that we're capturing hopefully the preferences of the whole committee. Okay, great.
I can work
Lauren?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, so are we going to have another meeting before June 1st, before the CIP, or are you going to make your determination via email?
I'm going to solicit interest until the 15th, and then I will make an appointment, and it will be sent out via email over 2 weeks before the meeting, so that person has knowledge of that. Okay, so if you're interested, please email Catherine, and she'll correspond with me, and then I'll make that appointment. Great. Stacy?
Are you thinking of sending a survey out just on days or just on times? Are you?
I think the majority, if not the entire committee, prefers Tuesdays, and that's typically how we've done it.
Okay.
So my preference as well is to do Tuesdays, and then during budget season, we can do Thursdays or maybe Wednesdays, but for now, Tuesdays are like the
Okay.
town designated day for budget committee, so that's typically been what we've been doing.
So you're more going to send a survey, sorry.
Let's do start.
About
Yeah.
times, about times.
I haven't heard, like unanimously, everybody wants a different day, so I think for now, we're gonna stick with Tuesdays.
Yep.
Cut the difference.
Just a
Okay.
difficult time.
So the last thing on here is facility tours discussion. So typically in the past, before budget season starts up, closer in the fall, like August, September, we've been doing tours of our town facilities, so our town and schools. Is that something the committee would like to continue with? Great. So I'm going to probably, in August, probably schedule a couple Tuesdays that we'll do some tours. So we'll probably do a couple elementary schools and departments and things like that. So I'll coordinate with the Chair, but it's the preference to keep it on Tuesdays and in the fall. Moving forward, though, I think we're going to maybe have one meeting in June and then take July off and decompress, and then we'll come back in the fall and do some facility tours right before budget season. Does that work for the members? Is that like yes, or is that like I'd like to?
Here's a question on the statement.
Go ahead.
Statement. If the board would like, I know that just because Mr. Scott Gross is here, I would like to extend that if we could at least take 30 minutes of our next meeting to review the ESSER funds that were spent on our football field and the work that's being progressed there. I think it would be a good use of time. So, again, up to the chair, but I think that Scott would love to showcase the work that's being done in the back of the high school for this group specifically as early as possible.
And I love that idea. So the June meeting, I want to go over, review the budget line by line as our purview for the RSAs. Our job is to kind of see where the town's spending, where our lines are over, where we're under. So I'm going to call a meeting for June so that we can kind of get an idea of what our charge is when we're not in budget season. So I'll also add that to the agenda. Go ahead, Stacey.
Some of the tours were really rushed, so I don't know if maybe we can consider having them a little bit longer. For some of the bigger schools and departments, I felt like we had a lot of questions for some of the departments that we just didn't have a lot of time to get into. I don't know if there's something we could maybe talk off at some point, maybe having them a little longer than a half an hour, I think is what we had for each school or each department.
Yeah, it's not a long time.
Well,
It wasn't very long.
Okay. All right, anyone else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Where's
All right, Peter makes a motion to adjourn. Brian seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.